Hello friends, welcome into the Cowboys Report presented by BetDSI, the internet's #1 sportsbook. Free agency is here for the Dallas Cowboys, and I've heard it from many of you, and I agree. The Cowboys should go get some safety help. Now, I know everyone's dream was Earl Thomas, but as you know by now, that ain't going to happen. A 4-year, $55 million deal to the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens stepped up with the big money Earl Thomas wanted. The Cowboys simply weren't going to pay Earl Thomas that. That was never going to happen. Now, we asked many of you about what you guys felt about the Earl Thomas stuff. There is a super chat here that we'll get to as well as it relates to Earl Thomas. But Dallas was never going to pay him that money. And we didn't get to this super chat live on the show, but we're going to do it right now with Kilgore as we film this. Big fan, are you mad that Earl Thomas got signed? First off, I'm glad you're a fan as well, Kilgore. I'm not really all that mad. I may be a little bit disappointed. I would have loved to get him at 4 years, $44 million. But when he signed it at a 4-year, $55 million deal, and we put this up on our YouTube channel for the poll, we're mostly in agreement here. I don't want to pay Earl Thomas that much money. Could it work out? Sure. The risk for me wasn't worth it. 4 years, $55 million, with a ton of that coming at the beginning. That was just way too much for the Cowboys to pay Earl Thomas. So in the end, I'm not all that upset. Now, I do still think safety is a need. Now, we're going to talk about free agency here. The draft is also an option. Make sure you're subscribed. YouTube.com/Dallas Cowboys Report. We'll update you with some draft targets later on in the offseason. But I like Xavier Woods. He's one starter. You can do better than Jeff Heath. Guys, it's a pretty strong free agency class, and even though Clinton Dix did just sign as well, still waiting on the exact money as we record this, there are plenty of available free agent options. So we're going to take you through the 10 guys that jump out to me. Now, you can also throw out guys like Chris Conte, Ron Parker. I'm not all that intrigued. At number 10, Tre Boston. I know you're going, Tom, I love Boston. Why isn't he higher? I wish he was higher. Here's the thing, though. I don't think Dallas is going to go after him. I don't think the Cowboys have much interest in Tre Boston, which I disagree with, but they already had a chance. They had a chance last season. Boston was unsigned forever, and no one was making a play at him. Nobody, until the Cardinals stepped up. The Cowboys didn't show interest. So unfortunately, even though I would do it if I were in charge, and I'm sure many of you would as well, because I think he's really underrated, I don't think it's going to go down. I hope I am wrong on that one. I won't rule it out altogether. That's why he's on the list, but I just don't think it's all that likely, unfortunately. Now, if you disagree with me, you can go prove yourself right by betting on BetDSI. Chatsports.com/bet takes you right to the site. Promo code Cowboys120 gets you extra money to bet with. They had free agency bets, combine bets, and hey, it's March. It's madness time. Bet on college basketball in the NCAA tournament. Chatsports.com/bet and use that promo code Cowboys120. Move along now with some more safety targets here for the Cowboys. Darian Stewart, cut by the Broncos before free agency, has played some strong, has played some free. Cowboys like the versatility there. He is going to turn 31. I think he'd be a decent fit alongside Xavier Woods. I think he would beat out maybe Jeff Heath for the role. In all likelihood, I think Stewart and Heath might split time, which I know some of you guys don't like Jeff Heath. He's like a number 3 safety. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you can upgrade. Maybe you should consider it. Another more known name, I'll call it, is Glover Quin. And I like what Quinn did in the past, but from what I have been told from people that I know that and trust that are close with Detroit, he wasn't the same guy anymore. It kind of declined. His play was off. He actually had less snaps down the stretch. He played mostly free safety for the Lions, which kind of worries me. How would he adjust to being in the box? I think he'd be fine. But if you're adding Quinn, you're still playing Xavier Woods as your top free safety there. So I'm intrigued by the idea of Quinn. Not sure he is the best fit, though, for the Cowboys. That's why he's at number 8. But he'd be cheap veteran depth. I won't be upset if he ends up in Dallas. Number 7, Clayton Geathers, and he has battled injuries. That's a big red flag there, but he's played both deep and box safety for Indianapolis. I think for the Cowboys, he'd slot in as more of a box safety, which we know he can do because he shared it with Malik Hooker, who is a true single high free safety. So I like the idea here of adding Clayton Geathers. A dark horse name for me. Injury is a concern that has to check out, but compared to other guys who are injured, we'll get to Eric Berry later, of course, I think he'd be a cheaper player in the end. So I'm intrigued by that idea there for Geathers. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Now, D-True1, DC for life. What are the biggest changes we can expect from the Cowboys in 2019? And this is a super chat we didn't get to live, so we got you covered now, my man. I think the biggest one was Scott Linehan. That was the big-time move the Cowboys made. They fired him. Now, I think defensive back, you'll see some changes either in the draft or in free agency. We saw some tweaks to the receiver core with Cole Beasley leaving. We'll see some tweaks on the defensive line as well. But without Earl Thomas, I think the biggest change has already happened, the firing of Scott Linehan. Into the top 6, then, where I feel pretty good about these guys, actually. George Iloka. And if you guys remember, when the Bengals cut him, we did shows, and you guys wanted him, and so did I. They did not land him. I was fairly disappointed in the end, though he did go for a bit more than I thought he would have got on the open market. But he didn't actually end up playing all that much for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think he's going to be expensive. I think he's going to be a cheaper option. And alongside Xavier Woods, I think he's a good fit. Now, he's still fairly young. All right, he's not going to be overly expensive. And again, I know he didn't have the best year, 16 tackles, but he's shown he can play. And oh, by the way, you know the Cowboys love their Boise State players, right? So maybe now that Iloka didn't work out quite as well in Minnesota as hoped, he could make sense for the Cowboys. And speaking of Minnesota, how about another safety, Andrew Sendejo, who was cut by Minnesota, or their option wasn't picked up. Matters for comp picks, not much else in terms of as relates to the Cowboys. But he's a hybrid safety. He has played in the box and he's played deep. I think he played more in the box as more of a number 2 safety alongside your single high guy in Xavier Woods. He is a little bit older, 32 years old, but we've seen this before from the Cowboys, right? Jameis Olawale, Joe Thomas last year. Oh, we saw him. We picked him up as an undrafted free agent. That's what Dallas did with Sendejo all the way back in 2010, was on their roster for a year, missed the team in 2011, and then made a career out elsewhere, mostly with the Minnesota Vikings. So he's not the best player on this list, understandably so, but he could come in. I worry he's not all that different than Jeff Heath, but at the very minimum, it gives you extra depth, and that's at least what the Cowboys need to do here. Find more depth at safety. We mentioned 2 former Vikings. Which one would you prefer? Type S for Andrew Sendejo and G for George Iloka. I listed them at 6 and 5. It's 5A, 5B, along with some other players that we'll get to here in a little bit. Number 4, a different type than the one we've really mentioned so far. Most of the guys we went through, Stewart and Gathers and Iloka and Sendejo, they can all do a little bit of both. Johnathan Cyprien is almost a linebacker playing safety. Now, he's a good athlete too, even though he's coming off a torn ACL, but he is more of a prototype box safety. Keep him near the line of scrimmage. Let him hit. That's his main area. And remember, the Titans signed Kenny Vaccaro, which I wanted Dallas to do, and they didn't do it last year. Should have done it. And they cut Cyprien after Cyprien's injury because that's why they signed Vaccaro. Vaccaro balled out. Now he's a free agent. And he wouldn't affect the comp pick formula. He was cut. Therefore, Cowboys add him. They can still get a pick back for Cole Beasley. I would assume not for Damian Wilson because it's been a crazy free agency. But you get a pick back there for Cole Beasley. So if you want just a pure strong safety, I like the idea of Johnathan Cyprien. Another more of a closer, but not quite as extreme as Cyprien as a pure strong safety, Adrian Phillips. Many of you have mentioned him before, and I'm on board. I like this idea for the Cowboys. Remember, he is probably not going to be back with the LA Chargers. He's not a total liability in coverage. He works really well at times in a 3-safety look. We saw that plenty with the Chargers down the stretch last year. Still pretty young, undrafted free agent out of Texas. Maybe that's why you guys all keep mentioning him. I'm kidding, of course. Has shown some decent playmaking ability. Not the same as like an Earl Thomas for sure, but enough that it intrigues me there. He's fine in coverage. He's a box safety. I don't think he'd be that expensive. I like the idea of Phillips heading from LA to the Dallas Cowboys. And oh, by the way, Phillips and Cyprien both played under Gus Bradley, who is a Seahawks defensive coordinator, runs a very similar scheme to what Chris Richard does. At number 2, another former Charger and Gus Bradley disciple, Jaleel Addae. Now, he was asked to play more free safety this year with Derwin James on the team, and he wasn't as good. And maybe it's an age thing. I'm not convinced that's the case. But when you go back and look at Addae, his best plays and his best moments and his best time as an NFL player was when he was more of a strong safety. I like that idea. Make him a strong safety. He can still play some free as needed because Xavier Woods likes to roam and hit too. But I like the idea of an Addae-Woods pairing. I also like the idea of a Phillips and Woods pairing. So which former Chargers safety would you guys prefer? Type P for Phillips, wow, it's not even close, and A for Addae. It's 2A, 2B for me there. I have no major preference there. I would venture to say all these guys we've mentioned would come in fairly on the cheap side given that most of the safety market has settled and there are not that many teams actually looking for a starter right now. But at number 1, you guys knew it was going to be the case there, Eric Berry. Now again, I'll make note, there is a lot of buts here. Eric Berry's great, but he's been hurt. He's a immensely talented playmaker, but he hasn't been on the field because of those injuries. So that's a concern for me. Now, with Eric Berry, the medical has got to check out. 3 games in the past 2 years. That's not going to get it done. You guys understandably get upset when Sean Lee can't play. Eric Berry's played in 3 games. Now, he's not going to be as expensive as Earl Thomas is, I would hope. Here's what I would do if I were the Cowboys. This assumes, of course, that no one ups my offer and pays him more money and that the medical does check out. My concern and my offer is 1 or 2 year deal, limited guaranteed money, low base salary, and high incentive deal. You keep it incentive based. If he plays all 16 games, I'm happy to pay him because he's great. He's Eric Berry. Everyone knows who Eric Berry is. And if he gets hurt, it kind of cover your butt there. The fear, of course, is that he gets more money elsewhere. By the way, watch out for the Cleveland Browns. They could be a threat as well, given the ties to John Dorsey. In the end, that's kind of where I think Eric Berry ends up signing. But if the money's right and the medical checks out, I like the idea of Berry with the Cowboys. All right, let's recap my top safeties Dallas could sign. Tre Boston, I want it to happen. The Cowboys haven't shown any interest in it. They've had so many chances. I don't know why that would have changed. Darian Stewart, Glover Quin, Clayton Geathers, then George Iloka. Then the top 5, Andrew Sendejo, Johnathan Cyprien, Adrian Phillips, those 4-3 kind of more box safeties. I like the idea of Cyprien as well as kind of a dark horse. Jaleel Adai and Eric Berry at number 1. But it's not all about me, obviously. I want to hear from you guys. Who is your top safety target for the Dallas Cowboys? Let me know in the comments section. Plenty of options out there, even some I didn't mention. Ron Parker, for example. Chris Conte, who I don't like all that much, but plenty of guys out there at minimum to provide added depth for the Cowboys at safety. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Hey Cowboys fans, thanks for watching the Cowboys Report. If you haven't already, click right here to subscribe to our channel for all the best Cowboys coverage on the internet. That's news, rumors, highlights, mailbags, film studies, and a whole lot more. And I'm making your lives a little bit easier as well with the next Cowboys Report video right here.